Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Brad Walter, and today we're going to be discussing how understanding the learning process can make you a better instructor, and give some examples that illustrate how learning those human behaviors can help you do better as an instructor. I'm not currently a flight instructor. I hope to be here at the beginning of next year, but I am an instructor in the Navy for flight engineer position. Here you can see the list of Thorndike's laws of learning. We have readiness, effect, exercise, primacy, intensity, and recency. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to be focusing on the primacy law of learning from Thorndike, and give a good example of how primacy can either be a good or bad thing in the learning process. Alright, for the law of primacy, a dumbed down version of it is what's learned first sticks, whether it's good or bad. The FAA definition from their aviation instructor's handbook is primacy in teaching and learning. What is first learned often creates a strong and almost unshakable impression and underlies the reason an instructor needs to teach correctly the first time. So what does that mean to us as instructors or up-and-coming instructors? Means that we have the responsibility to make sure we know the material very thoroughly and very well. That way we don't make any mistakes when we're teaching our students, whether it be a procedure or just a rote memorization of limits or power sources or something for an aircraft, memorizing a system and how it works. We need to make sure we, as instructors, have the material down perfectly. That way we don't screw up that primacy behavior of learning that our students are intaking. Because if we do end up teaching them something that's incorrect or teaching them the wrong way, it's going to be much more difficult to have them unlearn that bad behavior and reteach them the correct way to do things. So yeah, it just lengthens out the learning process and their progression through whatever syllabus or whatever aircraft you're trying to teach them. So make sure we know what we're doing as instructors and we teach it right the first time. So one example I have of this, I'm going to relate it to my job in the Navy. We have nose wheel steering on the P3 Orion, so it's a separate little wheel. You don't steer with the rudders like you do in typical light airplanes. You actually have a wheel for the nose wheel steering. When you're in the P3 and rolling down the runway, you're not supposed to start using nose wheel steering until you're below approximately 60 knots on the runway. Because if you do, you'll tend to start, if you overuse it, you'll start skidding the nose wheel, and that's obviously very bad for the strut and all the mounting points for that, and potentially the tires as well. So we had one of our instructor pilots that he would go down to the nose wheel around 80-85 knots when he felt comfortable doing so. So we questioned him on it, and he was like, well, if you know what you're doing, it's okay to go on it early. And we're like, well, you're showing these new students the wrong way to do something. And sure enough, a couple events later, another instructor pilot flew with one of the students he was teaching, and what happened? As soon as they got to around 80-85 knots, they reached down for that nose wheel steering and started skidding the nose wheel because they came on it too hard. So this is a perfect example of getting taught something wrong the first time, and then once that happened, it took us probably 4 or 5 more flights to break that habit that new student had of going on nose wheel steering too early and potentially causing damage to the plane. So we had to go to the simulator, make sure they were getting it down properly in the simulator, and then get them back into the plane. So it just slowed down their progress by an instructor knowing what the right thing was to do, but showing that bad example to a new impressionable student. So that's the first thing they saw, first thing they learned, and that's what stuck with them. So yeah, just knowing that the first thing that somebody learns is most likely going to be the one that sticks is a great tool to have for us as instructors. Having this knowledge of human behavior and just knowing how the brain works, knowing how people retain information and different learning styles is great to know as an instructor, so we can use it to our advantage and help the learning process go a little bit quicker. We need to always make sure we are learning as instructors and staying fresh on all of our material so that we teach things correctly the first time. And below is the reference for the Aviation Instructor's Handbook that I used for this presentation. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks.